Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome back to my 31 Days of Halloween Horror series, day three. We are up to October 3rd, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at a movie that was a first time watch for me from the late 70s, and that is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Now, this is the 1978 version with Donald Sutherland. I know there's one from I think 1956. I haven't seen that one, and I think there's another one from like 1993, which I hear is pretty terrible. But yeah, this is the one that most people would think of when they think of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I believe, from 1978. Now, as you'll probably notice, this isn't a factory case here. I This was made up. I basically got this movie as a hand me down, just the disc, not the case. So I kind of had to be creative and go online and make my own case here. So that's why it looks the way it does there. But anyway, yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. Another notable thing about this movie before I get into my review is the fact that it was released on December 22nd, 1978, 3 days before Christmas. And I was born December 23rd, 1978. So this movie actually came out a day before I was born, and I was born at 2:30 in the morning, I believe. So almost the same day, only a few hours difference. So I didn't realize that until I watched this movie and got prepared for my review. So just a couple little tidbits to throw out there, but I'll just kind of get into it. The Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a 1978 American science fiction horror film directed by Philip Kaufman. Um, as I said, it was released December 22nd, 1978. It's based on the 1955 novel The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. The novel was previously adapted to the 1956 film of the same name. So, in this movie, the plot involves a San Francisco health inspector and his colleague, who, over the course of a few days, discover that humans are being replaced by alien duplicates. Each is a perfect copy of the person replaced, but devoid of human emotion. So that's basically the gist of the movie. So it opens with a race of Jelenish Galanicious creatures. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Abandoning their dying planet and traveling to Earth, where they take the form of small pods with pink flowers. Elizabeth Driscoll, a laboratory scientist at the San Francisco Health Department, brings one of the flowers to her home. She awakens the next morning to discover her boyfriend, Jeffrey Howell, acting cold and distant and dropping nondescript debris into one of many garbage trucks that will become ubiquitous later on. The Driscoll's colleague Matthew Bennell advises her to visit a psychiatrist, David Kibner, who is giving presentations of his new book. As Elizabeth and Matthew drive to the bookstore, a hysterical civilian warns them of danger before being pursued by a mob, killed by a hit and run, and surrounded by emotionless onlookers. At the presentation, Kibner skillfully sows doubt in Elizabeth and another woman about their shared misgivings concerning their respective partners. Meanwhile, Jack Belichick, an inspiring writer and a friend of Matthew, calls Matthew to investigate when a deformed body resembling Jack is formed in his wife Nancy's mud parlor. Matthew goes to Elizabeth to warn her, but discovers a semi formed duplicate of her. Matthew rescues Elizabeth and alerts the police, but the duplicates of Jack and Elizabeth disappear before the arrival. So that's basically the start of the movie, kind of how we get into it. As far as the cast goes, we have Donald Sutherland as Matthew Bennell, Jeff Goldblum as Jack Belenek, Leonard Nimoy as Dr. David Kibner, Brooke Adams as Elizabeth Driscoll, Veronica Cartwright as Nancy Belichick, and Art Hindle as Dr. Jeffrey Howell. So pretty good cast in this movie. I didn't actually know all that those actors and actresses were in this movie until I watched it. So yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. I really enjoyed this movie. Having this been a movie that I hadn't seen before, and really I don't hear a whole lot about it. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that I've heard about it, but not it's not talked about as one of the great horror movies, one of the great science fiction horror movies, and I think that it is, quite frankly. This movie really worked for me on a lot of levels. So let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with my pros or the things I really enjoyed about the movie. And You got to start with the premise of the quiet alien invasion that this movie has, as opposed to the sort of the typical, um, out front, loud, and live action invasion that we tend to get and sort of these type of movies. Basically, this invasion here happens quietly and gradually in the background, and it is unbeknownst to the characters in the movie. Before anyone with any power to stop it, it's already too late, and that just adds another layer to the horror and the tension in this movie, and that really worked for me. I really enjoyed how they slip how they basically come to be in these involving in these flowers. It's just very, very beneath the surface, undetectable. That's the most horrific part of this movie, quite frankly, and it really builds the tension. So yeah, that's definitely a pro. The performance of the entire cast, I think, is really good, from Donald Sutherland to Leonard Nimoy to Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum. Really, everybody's on point here, and you can tell everybody's really committed to the story here, and they all do a really good job. To add to the horror of this movie with their very real life portrayals. In my opinion, I didn't think there was a false note anywhere with the cast, so that was definitely very much a pro. Also, there's really good chemistry between the two main characters, Donald Sutherland and Brooke Adams, Matthew Bennell and Elizabeth Driscoll. You can tell that they kind of have a little bit of a flirtatious kind of a thing going on with them. It's not really talked about much, but they have really good chemistry and they really work well together as well, I thought. I also really like the look and the practical effects that are used related to the pod people, as we're introduced to these different pods, and as they become more mature pods, and just everything that we see from a visual standpoint is that very effective and believable, and and as a result, it gives you a very unsettling feeling and a sense of dread. At least it did for me as I was watching the movie. Also, you got to talk about the paranoia and the suspense in this movie. It's definitely palatable, and it makes for a very engaging watch. I wasn't bored at all watching this movie, even though it can be considered to be kind of a slow burn horror movie, and even a slow burn underlying horror movie. It's not a lot of horror like right on screen in front of you necessarily, but the paranoia is really here. Um, yeah, just a very engaging watch. It adds a sense of dread, as I said, especially, of course, as the movie goes on, as we get into our second act and even into our third act. Of course, the shrill sound of the pod people, aka the aliens, once they're developed, it really makes for a really effective and creepy atmosphere. It's really like nails on a chalkboard. I'm not going to try to duplicate it because I can here. They actually came up with it with using several different sounds and devices. So I don't even think anybody could really do it. But yeah, definitely a feeling of dread with it. It's very effective. The overall soundtrack and score to the movie as well is really good. It just adds that sense of paranoia that really ratchets up and adds the effectiveness of the movie with the music that they use, the soundtrack that's in this movie, very effective. Of course, you can't talk about this movie without talking about the very end of this movie, which I kind of had an inkling because just from spoilers and things like that. But still, having watched the whole movie and then leading up to it, they do a really good job of. I'm not going to give it away, but what ends up happening at the end is not. They don't really drop any hints necessarily because of the how the movie kind of flows and the paranoia as you get through the middle and towards the end of the movie. You basically have humans on one side, and you have these pod people, aliens, on the other side, and the humans try to act like the pod people. Sometimes the pod people try to act like the humans. Sometimes, so you're not really sure who's with who, and that's part of what makes the movie so great. But the very ending has a great payoff with that too. That's not really that easy to see coming, in my opinion. And I love the final scene of the movie. I just think it's a great payoff to all the build-up, a great way to end any horror movie. And I guess in the 1956 version, they had more of a different kind of ending than what you get in this movie, but um, not by the directors. The director actually kind of wanted more of the ending like you got in this movie, but in the 1950s, the studios overrode him basically. But yeah, the ending is great to this movie. So I could probably go on. The cinematography is also really good in this movie, and the overall atmosphere with the sense of dread and the camera shots and the cinematography is used definitely adds to the tension as well here, to the horror of this movie. As far as cons go, there really aren't a lot. I would say that the only one that I really have is the third act, or the final act isn't quite as strong as I would have liked as I would have liked it to have been. There's a lot of chasing, being cornered, and then escaping by our two lead characters, and that kind of repeats itself. Wash, rinse, repeat a couple, two, three times where it looks like they're in trouble, they're going to be captured, they fall into a trap, but they manage to get out of it before they're caught again. And it just kind of got a little tedious to me. It kind of felt a little bit like movie filler as well. I would have liked a little bit more direct confrontation, maybe with the aliens, or a little bit more explanation even of the aliens and kind of their original planet that they came from, something, anything different than what we got here. Not that it destroys the movie, but it does get kind of tedious. It was one thing I noticed in the third act. And it's not really a negative for me, certainly, but it is kind of a slow burn horror movie, and there's not a lot of on scare horror or scares here. So for younger people, people that are more about today's modern horror movie, the horror is more underlying here. You kind of have to think about it. It's under the surface, and that really works well for me. But I'm just pointing it out that some people might find it kind of boring or slow. Again, not a con for me, but I could see some people being, making that not comparison, but arriving at that point basically while watching this movie, especially people that are probably more used to like the jump scares and the horror, the gore that's seen right on film. There's a little bit of blood and gore here, but not a whole lot. The gore is more in the pods that we see, the practical effects, the use of. There's really one creepy scene with a dog slash human amalgamation, if you will. That's also very effective, and that I should mention is another pro in this movie that kind of throws things off the rails for our main characters as well because of their distaste for it or their shock by it. But yeah, the practical effects are great when it comes to that kind of stuff. As I said, not a lot of gore, a little bit of blood, but this is a very effective science fiction horror movie. It really is at the end of the day, and I really enjoyed it. I might actually have to upgrade this at some point to a Blu-ray. For right now, I'm okay with this, but I really enjoyed the movie enough to definitely keep it in my collection. Maybe even look to upgrade it at some point. So, yeah, that's really all I've got as far as my review goes. I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. I thought for what it is, it really worked on just about every level for me, as I said, except for the third act. A little bit tedious there, but 9 out of 10 nonetheless. I really enjoyed the 1978 version. I'll have to check out the 1956 version and maybe even the book at some point in the future. If you've seen the 1956 version and you've seen this version, let me know what your thoughts about the comparison between the two. Or if you've only seen this version and you're like me, you haven't seen the 56 version, let me know your thoughts on this movie. Do you like it as much as I do, less than I do? Why or why not? Down in the comments below. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews for this series. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel as well down below so you don't miss any of my great horror content. Not only the rest of this series, but the content that I have coming out the rest of this year and into next year. So, yeah, that's my day three, 31 Days of Halloween horror review video. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, 9 out of 10 for Invasion of the Body Snatchers from '78. Um, Hope everybody's doing well. Stay scared. Happy October. Bye.